Once this occurs, one finds that the will is transferred in a purely logical, objective manner to other conceptions that are causally related to the earlier ones and that now possess the status of means to that final purpose. Wherever the intellect leads us, we are completely dependent, since it leads us solely through the actual connections between things. The intellect is the mediator through which volition adjusts itself to independent being. If we conceive of a rigid conception of the calculation of means and abide by it, then we are purely theoretical, absolutely non-practical beings when we act in this manner. Volition only accompanies the series of our considerations like an organ pedal note or like the general presupposition of a domain in whose peculiarities and conditions it does not interfere, yet which alone can give life and reality to it. The number of means and the length of their series which form the content of our activity thus develop in proportion to intellectuality as the subjective representative of the objective world order. Since every means is, as such, completely indifferent, so all emotional values are in practice tied to the ends, to the critical point of action whose attainment radiates no longer upon our activity but only on the receptivity of our souls. The more such termini we have in our practical life, the stronger will be the emotional function in relation to the intellectual. The impulsiveness and emotional intensity so frequently reported among primitive peoples is probably connected with the shortness of their teleological series. Their life work does not possess that cohesion of elements which is prevalent in higher cultures, where an occupation uniformly pervades life. Rather, their activity consists of a simple series of interests which, if they attain the end at all, do so with relatively few means. In this connection, the direct effort to obtain food is an important contributing factor which, in higher cultures, is replaced by an almost continuous multi-linked series of purposes. Under these circumstances, the conception and enjoyment of final goals is relatively frequent. The awareness of objective connections and of reality, that is intellectuality, operates less frequently than emotional connotations which characterize both the immediate conception as well as the real emergence of final purposes. Even during the Middle Ages there existed a larger number of specific points of satisfaction for purposive action than at present, and this was due to the prevailing production for one's own needs geared to the various kinds of craftsmen's establishments, to the variety and closeness of associations particularly through the Church. Today, when roundabout ways and preparations for such moments of satisfaction have become endless, the goal of the moment more usually lies beyond that moment, or even beyond the horizon of the individual. This extension of the series is brought about by money because money creates a common, central interest for otherwise unrelated series, thereby connecting the different series so that the one series can become the preparation for another which is objectively quite unrelated, for example, where the money returns of one series and therewith the whole series itself, serves as the basis for financing another series. However, the crux of the matter is the general fact, the emergence of which has been discussed earlier, that money is everywhere conceived as purpose, and countless things that are really ends in themselves are thereby degraded to mere means. But since money itself is an omnipresent means, the various elements of our existence are thus placed in an all-embracing teleological nexus in which no element is either the first or the last. Furthermore, since money measures all objects with merciless objectivity, and since its standard of value so measured determines their relationship, a web of objective and personal aspects of life emerges which is similar to the natural cosmos with its continuous cohesion and strict causality. This web is held together by the all-pervasive money value, just as nature is held together by the energy that gives life to everything. Like money, energy appears in innumerable forms, but the uniformity of its very nature and the possibility of transforming any specific form into any other results in a relationship between all of them and makes each of them a condition of any other. Just as every emotional accentuation has disappeared from the interpretation of natural processes and has been replaced by an objective intelligence, so the objects and relationships of our practical world, inasmuch as they form increasingly interconnected series, exclude the interference of emotions. They become merely objects of intelligence and appear only at the teleological terminal points. The growing transformation of all elements of life into means, the mutual connection of sequences that previously terminated in autonomous purposes with a complex of relative elements, is not only the practical counterpart of the growing causal knowledge of nature, and the transformation of its absolutes into relativities. Rather, since the whole structure of means is one of a causal connection viewed from the front, the practical world too increasingly becomes a problem for the intelligence. To put it more precisely, the conceivable elements of action become objectively and subjectively calculable rational relationships, and in so doing progressively eliminate the emotional reactions and decisions which only attach themselves to the turning points of life, to the final purposes. Lack of character and objectivity of the style of life. This relationship between the significance in life of the intellect and money characterizes the epochs or spheres of interest where both predominate. It does this firstly in a negative way, by a certain lack of character. If character always means that persons or things are definitely committed to an individual mode of existence as distinct from and excluding any other, then the intellect is in no way affected by such factors. For the intellect is the indifferent mirror of reality in which all elements enjoy equal rights, because here their rights exist in nothing other than their mere existence. To be sure, people's intellects have different characteristics, but strictly speaking these are either only differences of degree, depth or superficiality, breadth or narrowness, or they are differences originating in the addition of other mental energies, of emotion or volition. The intellect, as a pure concept, is absolutely lacking in character, not in the sense of being deficient in some necessary quality, but because it exists completely apart from the selective one-sidedness that determines character. There is, obviously, a lack of character in money too. Just as money per se is the mechanical reflex of the relative value of things and is equally useful to everyone, so within money transactions all persons are of equal value, not because all but because none is valuable except money. However, the lack of character of both intellect and money transcends this purely negative meaning. We demand, perhaps not always rightly so, that all things have a definite character, and we resent purely theoretical people who, because they understand everything, are inclined to condone everything, an objectivity that would certainly befit a god but never a man, since man places himself in obvious contradiction both with his nature and with his role in society. Thus we resent the money economy offering its central value as a fully compliant instrument for the meanest machinations. This is not compensated for by the fact that the high-minded enterprise gets the same credit as the meanest, rather, the completely fortuitous relationship between the series of monetary operations and the series of our higher value concepts, and the meaninglessness of the one measured in terms of the other, is most glaringly illustrated. The peculiar leveling of emotional life that is ascribed to contemporary times in contrast to the forthrightness and ruggedness of earlier epochs, the ease of intellectual understanding which exists even between people of the most divergent natures and positions, whereas even such an intellectually outstanding and theoretically committed person as Dante tells us that one should respond to certain theoretical opponents not with arguments but only with the knife. The trend towards conciliatoriness springing from indifference to the basic problems of our inner life, which one can characterize at its highest level as the salvation of the soul and as not being soluble by reason, right up to the idea of world peace, which is especially favored in liberal circles, the historical representatives of intellectualism and of money transactions, all these are positive consequences of the negative trait of lack of character. This colorlessness becomes, as it were, the color of work activity at the high points of money transactions. There are a large number of occupations in modern cities, such as certain categories of general and trading agents and all those indeterminate forms of livelihood in large cities, which do not have any objective form and decisiveness of activity. For such people, economic life, the web of their teleological series, has no definite content for them except making money. Money, the absolutely entity, is for them the fixed point around which their activity circulates with unlimited scope. It is a peculiar kind of unskilled labor compared with which what is usually characterized as unskilled is still highly qualified. The essence of this latter type of work consists in mere muscular work where the amount of energy employed completely outweighs the form of its expression.